What's up, guys? It's Dan from Coin Bureau Trading, back at it again with another crypto market update. Today, we're going to take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, specifically where they're headed in the short term and in the medium term, and I guess exactly why I believe the crypto market is likely to top over the summer, specifically over the next 4 to 5 months, roughly speaking. If this is the kind of content that you enjoy, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ping that notification bell. Before we get started, do keep in mind that nothing in this video is financial advice. It's just my personal analysis of the crypto market. Your analysis could be different, and if it is, that's awesome, because the more difference of opinion that we have, the better traders and the better investors we're all going to become. With that being said, guys, I actually want to start by playing a clip. This is a interview done with Michael Howell from early April, so roughly a month ago. For those of you who don't know, Michael Howell is kind of like the expert in global liquidity. If you've seen all these charts on like Twitter/X of like M2 money supply rising and stuff like that, a lot of people are saying that those charts are not accurate. But if you watch last week's video, you'll know that I basically pointed out that yes, M2 money supply charts are not accurate, but that doesn't change the fact that that in the short term, at least, they're actually consistent with what these like institutional grade liquidity indicators are showing. So again, this is from an interview that Michael Howell, who's like an expert in global liquidity, this is a video that he did, or an interview that he did a month ago. And I'm actually going to throw on my headphones here and we're going to listen together just like for 10 seconds, just so you guys can get a sense, I guess, like of the first factor why I actually think the crypto market's going to top over the summer, and especially in this case, we're talking specifically about Bitcoin primarily. So let's take a listen together here. Hopefully it's loud enough on your guys' end.
So it's approximately sort of leading by about 3 months. Now, what this is basically saying is you could well get a rally in Bitcoin over coming months. That's, one accepts that because global liquidity is picking up again. The problem that I'm trying to cite here is that I'm not looking at the next 3 months. Generally, my concerns are about the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And it may
So this is actually something really important to point out, because it's not only an explanation as to why I think crypto is going to rally over the summer, but why I think a cycle top later in the year or early next year is unlikely. And that's basically because Michael Howell's liquidity indicator is showing like, hey, by the end of this year, liquidity is basically going to be going down again. This is something Michael has been projecting since last year, and it's part of why I've personally believed that the crypto market would top sometime around this time this year, is primarily due to his like liquidity stuff. It's something I've been watching quite closely. Of course, I'm not a member of Cross-Border Capital or anything, but I do listen to these interviews very frequently to get a sense of like on the macro side, like what's going on in terms of liquidity, interest rates, and that type of stuff. So again, on the liquidity side, basically, in case you guys missed that or didn't really understand, according to Michael Howell's liquidity index, global liquidity is rising, and that means that in the next few months, we're going to see a rally in Bitcoin. And I do believe this is going to also spill over into altcoins, but we'll get to that in a second. For now, we'll just focus on Bitcoin. Another reason why I think Bitcoin is going to see a pretty sizable rally in the next few months has to do with gold. Some of you guys might have seen on Twitter/X that a few people were posting about the fact that Bitcoin basically tends to lag gold by a few months. I believe this is something that Michael has found in his research as well, but Bitcoin tends to lag gold by around 3 months. People have found it's like, I guess there's a range. There's this chart which you may or may not have seen. It didn't really get much traction, but judging by this post, only 405 views. So chances are you haven't seen this chart, but this is basically looking at Bitcoin lagging gold, and you can see that it lags between 90 to 180 days, which is a pretty wide range. But I do think that in the next, well, I mean, based on my own analysis, it's roughly around 100 days. But whatever. Point being is that somewhere in the next, let's say, couple of months, we should see gold basically, or sorry, Bitcoin basically catch up to gold, or basically follow gold. And of course, as you can see, guys, gold has basically been going up only for like 3 months, or went up only, or basically rallied in February, March, and April. And then now in May, maybe we'll start to see a little bit of a pullback in gold. I'm not a gold trading expert, so don't like take my analysis of gold with a grain of salt here. But from what I've heard and from my own basic technical analysis, I do think that gold is probably going to cool off over the next couple of months while we see a rally in risk assets, including crypto. But the key takeaway here is that you saw a massive 3 candles higher here in gold, and it's really fascinating. And I should actually zoom out to the monthly here on Bitcoin so you guys can get a better perspective. The monthly chart on Bitcoin here, again, don't focus too much on the levels or anything, just focus on the pattern. And you can see the pattern looks very similar to what gold was doing here when it broke out basically of this bull flag. You can see that I guess it was in November, December last year, which of course you guys will remember. November, December was when risk assets saw a huge rally, and of course that corresponded to gold going down. No surprises there. And then of course you basically saw like this bull flag form and a massive rally higher, and now you're probably going to see gold cool off for a few months. And it looks like Bitcoin is going to do the same thing here, where it's similarly painting a bull flag, and then that kind of foreshadows that in June, July, August, that we would see basically like 3-month candles of like up only in a really, really massive rally. And this is what I expect is going to happen, and I do think that altcoins are going to follow. But that's just in the medium term here, let's say. And I do think, I guess for the record, that Bitcoin is going to likely top somewhere between 140 and 160,000. I do think it's possible that Bitcoin could swing as high as 200,000. You can refer to last week's video if you want to understand why. But again, just looking at global liquidity, looking at gold and how Bitcoin lags gold, these two things, this two of many indicators that suggest that Bitcoin is going to see explosive growth over the summer. And again, I am personally eyeing a target of between 140 and 160,000 with a possibility of going as high as 200. I know that Aaron's target is somewhere around like 170K. That's definitely possible. I do think that's definitely possible as well. But I guess before I start showing the deals page, I do want to take a look at Bitcoin here in the shorter term. Bitcoin has basically been chopping, and I guess this actually does tie into Aaron's analysis. Bitcoin has basically been chopping here for what is it now, like 2 weeks roughly. Bitcoin has been chopping, and of course, every single trader has basically been looking at this price action and saying, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, it's gonna explode higher." But what I actually think in the short term, again, I'm not going to put like a very strong call on this necessarily, but in the short term, I actually do think it's possible that Bitcoin could see a little bit of a fake out, like maybe a drop down back down to like 88K or something, just to something super temporary on the back of some bearish catalyst, kind of similar like to what we saw back here in late February, like related to the tariffs, like this kind of like wick lower and then a sudden recovery. Similar thing, but like kind of in reverse, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure exactly what that catalyst will be. Maybe it'll be something related to tariffs, geopolitics, interest rates, who knows. But the point being is that it wouldn't surprise me to see a surprise move lower. All the bears come out. They say it's over. It's over. I told you it was a bear market rally. I told you it's all over. All the people who are like who are hoping for a recovery, they're going to say, okay, it's over. I'm selling everything, right? The few who are still around, right? Most people I think have already sold, especially when it comes to altcoins. But when we do see that, if we do see that move down, let's say to around, I don't know, like I think it could be between like 86 or 84, even 84, like 88K. Temporary move lower, people think it's over. But then we see a recovery by the end of the month. Basically, Bitcoin is back on track, back in the upper 90K range or even in the 100K range, and moving up to see that massive kind of like 3 month like thrust, that 3 month thrust to the upside over the summer, basically June, July, August. And so if you guys follow like Peter Brandt and these expert traders, they're starting to see the same thing, which leads me to believe that I'm on the right track here with this analysis. But in the short term, again, it's always possible, of course, that Bitcoin could just keep powering higher. But I have a feeling that we're going to see another little bit of at least a small fake out to kind of trap the bears and make all the bears think that the bear market is starting. But then we'll get probably a pretty aggressive recovery out of that by the end of the month. And then by the end of the month, we'll be at the levels that we are now or slightly higher and preparing for another breakout higher. Anyways, guys, you might have noticed that we were using Binance there. The Coin Bureau deals page has a 20% trading fee discount and up to $600 in bonuses. This is a deal that's available exclusively through the Coin Bureau. You won't find it anywhere else. Taking advantage of the deal is super simple. Just click the link down below. It'll take you to a page that looks like this. Enter your email or phone number. Signing up takes like 2 minutes. It's super simple, super quick. Binance has all the cryptos you could possibly need. And if you can't use Binance for whatever reason, do keep in mind that the Coin Bureau deals page does have deals on other exchanges like Arkham, which is available to US residents. We have a whole bunch of other exchanges there that you can use. And we also have crypto wallets or hardware wallets discounts and deals if you're also looking to get a discount on that. And again, the link to all that is down in the description. So do check that out before those deals are gone. Anyways, guys, moving on now to Ethereum. So this is where, kind of like my view is that Ethereum is kind of like a proxy for altcoins. And this is where things get a little bit tricky, because initially I thought that the Fed's upcoming meeting here on May 7th, which is in 2 days, I thought that this would kind of potentially be a catalyst for another leg lower, and maybe it will be. Maybe that'll be the thing that causes Bitcoin to kind of, see a little bit of a surprise move downwards. Of course, that would also translate into altcoins, that we would see like a short, like kind of like a surprise pullback as a result of the Fed being super hawkish or something. But the more that I look at the charts, the more I start to wonder, maybe the Fed will be a little bit more dovish than people are expecting, because it seems that the consensus view is really that the Fed's going to hold strong. They're not going to say anything dovish. They're going to be super, if anything, they're going to come out hawkish. It seems that the consensus is on that side. So the chances of a surprise in the other direction, I think, are potentially high. And one thing that's really interesting as well, guys, is that Ethereum has its Pectra upgrade coming here on May 7th. So basically the same day as the Fed meeting, Ethereum has a massive upgrade that's going to go through. And who knows, maybe the upgrade will have some technical issues, and you combine that with a hawkish Fed, and then Ethereum, basically sees like another like lower or whatever. Is that possible? Sure. But I actually think that at this stage, and something, gives PTSD to a lot of people, but this whole time, like over this whole year, ever since crypto started rallying in late 2023, I've been saying that the risks are to the upside, and I still believe that wholeheartedly. And of course, it's tough for those who are holding altcoins that are down quite a lot, even those who are holding Ethereum. But the fact of the matter is, guys, that, especially when we zoom out and we look at like Ethereum on the monthly, for example, like all it takes is 1 or 2 months and you're basically out of the lows, right? And even shorter than that, you can see moves that are really aggressive, like within a couple of weeks. You're basically doubling in price, right? And for smaller cap altcoins, that happens a lot quicker. And this is what people forget, is that when prices are down, they think it's never ever going to recover. And then next thing you know, within a few days, a couple of weeks, you're like, oh wait, like I'm back at break even, and like that was fast, like 2 or 3 weeks. And I do think that in Ethereum's case, it's possible. Again, like it's something I've been saying for a while. I actually do think that Ethereum is going to rally up at least to the Bollinger Band moving average on the weekly around 2,400 in the next couple of weeks, and maybe the Fed meeting, maybe Pectra will be the catalyst for that. Again, could there be a short term, like a move lower in the short term, like that ETH pulls back another 10%, let's say back to like, I don't know, 1,600? Sure, it's possible, but the thing that kind of really catches my eye, guys, is the ETH BTC pair, which I guess ties in also a little bit to the ETH pair, but we'll start with ETH BTC. That it's been actually holding steady, like for this whole, I think it's been basically a month now that ETH BTC has been like basically chopping around the low range here. And is it possible that ETH BTC is going to see another break lower and we're going to continue to see bleeding in ETH and altcoins? Sure, that's possible, but if we zoom out to like the long term chart here, you can see that ETH is really like at extreme lows here, right? Like versus Bitcoin. So could ETH just continue bleeding indefinitely? Sure, but on balance of probability, ETH has already fallen so much that the chances of at least some kind of bounce in the short term, whether it's a full recovery, some could say, oh, it's too soon to say there's going to be a full recovery. Fine, but the idea that we're going to see a bounce here in the next couple of months in ETH, I don't think is actually too far fetched, especially when you combine the liquidity conditions, Bitcoin rallying. At the very least, at least the ETH BTC pair suggests that ETH will rally at least as much as Bitcoin in percentage terms, because that's kind of basically what it's been doing. It's been moving in lockstep with Bitcoin. That's what ETH BTC tells you. The fact that it's been flat, that ETH has been moving in lockstep with BTC for the last basically month, which is a good sign. We haven't really seen that. We've just seen ETH bleeding, and like now we're seeing ETH move in lockstep. We're seeing it being on the same level as Bitcoin, and that's a little bit interesting to me, especially when you see that the ETH BTC pair, it's above the Bollinger Band moving average on the daily. It's been holding above that level, I think, for the longest period since I can remember, to be honest. Like maybe since late last year. Like it's been there for like I think a week or almost 2 weeks now, and of course it's now squeezing, and that suggests the squeezing suggests that we're going to see an imminent move of some kind. Is that going to be to the upside, to the downside? I think it's going to be to the upside, and that could potentially be a 20% or even 40% outperformance of Bitcoin relative to Ethereum in the short term, which would be pretty crazy, right? Like no one would be anticipating that. And what's similar on the Ethereum chart on the daily is you can see that similarly to the ETH BTC chart, Ethereum has not been above the daily Bollinger Band moving average for this long in months. Like I think, yeah, since late last year, it hasn't been above this level. Every single time it would get above, it would get rejected, get above, get rejected, get above, get rejected. Now it's above and it's holding above. And that tells me, well, there's a little bit of strength, going on here. And of course, if ETH starts to rally, then we're going to see a lot of rally in altcoins. Why is that? Because most altcoins with economic value, and again, this is actually a little bit of nuance there because now it's potentially moving a little bit more to Solana, but most altcoins with economic value still exist on Ethereum. So if ETH rallies, then most altcoins on Ethereum rally. And again, most of the altcoins with economic value are on Ethereum, and that basically reflects as most altcoins rallying across the board, which again, like, am I saying that's going to happen in the next couple of days? Honestly, maybe. I actually think it's possible that we're going to see a strong rally in ETH and altcoins while Bitcoin continues chopping. That would kind of be my base case. But again, it's like the possibility that we could see a little bit of surprise move lower because of the Fed or something else. That's still something that's on the table. So, to be honest, I'm basically just sitting on my hands for the next few days in terms of this price action. But of course, I do have an ETH long position that's open. But again, this ETH long position has basically it's just been chopping sideways. But of course, I'll give you guys an update there when I close that and what's going on. But so far, there's no changes. ETH has just been chopping. Bitcoin has just been chopping. Some altcoins have continued bleeding. Some altcoins have continued rallying. This is completely normal at this stage of the cycle. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next few months, again, with this liquidity and with Bitcoin following gold. And I am pretty excited. And I do think we're going to see some pretty sizable gains in BTC, ETH. And then, yeah, guys, last thing I'll say, just in terms of a cycle top target for ETH. I actually think that cycle top for ETH will probably be somewhere around 7.5 or 8,000. I don't think it'll get quite to 10,000, but I do think it'll get close. Just based on very simple, just like, support resistance here. Like, we have like 1,500 starting point, roughly 4,000. What's that different of 3,500? So that gives us a ETH price of around of 7,500, right? So yeah, that's basically or sorry, two and a half. Sorry, it would be 2,500. So around the 6,500. Sprinkle in a little bit of leverage, sprinkle in a little bit of short squeezes, and you get an ETH price somewhere in the 7,000, 8,000 range. Anyways, guys, so yeah, if you did find that information helpful, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, ping that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.